I would really want to learn from other environmental organizations.
We get a lot of invitations per year, and usually we say no. And we try to go to the ones that matter.
The theme of resilience is very close to me, it's professionally and also personally.
It seemed that the premise of the meeting meant business, which means that they were taking seriously all the different things which are ongoing today in the world, including the financial crisis, the real impacts of climate change, loss of culture, loss of languages, biodiversity issues. They were defining this meeting as a starting point of a framework for the new times. So after long discussions in many villages, we decided to come and present the things we know. So,
what appealed particularly to me as an individual coming to this Ecotrust convening, so we thought the values and aspirations that are being espoused here and have been for the past 20 years in the case of Ecotrust are values that reflect the things that we're trying to achieve and accommodate in our own locale, in our own region and amongst our own people.
I was attracted by the variety of people who were invited to this, with the vast experience that they had.
Well, the theme of the convening is something that goes very much along the lines of what I've been talking about at the different international fora.
Our organization is focusing on rivers. So like big river, as you know, the Yangtze River, Yellow River.
When I was young, my father would just stand on the beach and throw a line, and then that would be enough for our dinner.
This region has 7,000 various plants, which is unique and rare.
As time goes on, that's within a span of 10 to 20 years. These dramatic changes happen. They have to go further and further away from the, from the village to be able to catch enough for the family.
So once the dam is built, this will be destroyed.
In Siberia, there's permafrost, and this permafrost is now melting because of the warming that's already taking place. And there are billions of greenhouse gases trapped inside this permafrost, which are now, right this moment, being released to the atmosphere. And the amount that we are talking about exceeds all the industrial output of the world today.
There are no, deniers in the Pacific, for climate change, and every day, people in the village see the impact of climate change, with the sea level rise, and I can even tell, a personal experience. When I was growing up, that's only 20 years ago. We had about 100 meters in front of our house before the coastline, and I went back home last year, and there's only 20 meters away the coastline. So
the biggest challenge for our organization is the funding source.
One of the biggest obstacles for us now is getting the finance to be able to do that work.
It's hard to get funding from either government or enterprises.
Whatever the government has is to go to some critical expenses for the government, and environment is not on top of the list.
World revolves around oil. It's an empire of oil and some of the other key minerals. So I would say that the West, or the system that's in place now, is so desperate, and most of the other regions around the world are becoming so empty of resources that there's no other future for the Arctic, because they know that there's millions and millions of barrels of unused oil in the Inuit lands, in the Nenets lands, in Yamal, in Siberia. So why should they care about the Aboriginal and local communities if they have needs?
we should not only represent one group of people like wealth people and people in the urban. We should also consider the people in the village.
And it's really the failure of European civilizations to find a meaningful and sustainable relationship with nature. And as they are dying themselves, they are going to take these indigenous peoples with them.
For the people living rural area, they really want to join the big city. But the big city cannot has the capacity to take so many people.
Life is empty if you don't have your tradition. So, and tradition doesn't bring bread to the table, but without it, we are nothing.
But the people in the rural area, they have good environment, but they don't have good life because the poverty.
And I come from a community and people that lost our tradition. So the little that we have been able to regain and rebirth is almost too hard to talk about because it's so precious. And
but people in the city, they accumulate the wealth but lose the good environment. So this is the biggest conflict.
The reason why we are broken in the Arctic is, even though it takes many kind of different forms, but there was a group of farming societies that came and destroyed all the beautiful civilizations that existed there. And it's called colonization.
You know, you can talk about the global issues, but it's the personal, private, individual, down-to-earth issues that matter the most. And that's the one which will count in the end.
My country is one of the very few countries that's very vulnerable to climate change.
The major challenge, in my view, that's facing the Kimberley region is the proposals that are on the table now with government and industry and others for an industrialisation of our region.
Well, I am as a politician. I'm a leader of my nation. And what I see are things that are happening to communities which did not happen in the past.
Having geological assets on our country is very tempting for developers and industry and others to exploit.
We went to Africa because it's a continent which the back is broken, almost. The spine is broken, they all think that they can't do it themselves. And I say, this is ridiculous. What do you mean you can't do it yourself? You don't need a white man to install a hand pump for you. You can do it yourself, but it's gone into their mindset. How do you change the mindset to believe that they can do it themselves?
We had the great honor of having the Secretary General of the United Nations visit last weekend. And so we took him to some of the worst affected areas. And he, in his own words, he was shocked. He didn't know this existed. He'd been to the North Pole, he'd been to Brazil, the Amazon, he'd been to the Himalayas, but he'd never been to a low-lying atoll country. And what he saw, I hope, makes him understand and feel what I've been trying to communicate all over all these years.
The biggest challenges in preserving the integrity of our region, both its social and its cultural and its economic, are the demands that are driven by a worldview within Australia that the exploitation of resources is central to our economic and social well-being. We take a view in the Kimberley, or many of us do in the Kimberley, that that's not the case.
If you're looking at the poor globally, it's cross-regional. The problems that everyone faces are so basic. And the tragedy is we haven't been able to solve it substantially, fundamentally, over these 6 decades. And it's sad, because there are solutions on the ground which are scalable, workable, practical, low cost, community-based. And people are not listening.
The point is that quite often we will be talking about building resilience in the future. I think our case is not that. We already lost our resilience. And the question is how to restore that resilience.
There's an urgency out there which people are not addressing seriously enough. There's a hell of a big urgency there.
The colonial history in our region is, it's relatively short in terms of the Australian experience. It's been 120, 130 year colonial experience.
You know, hundreds of years ago, people, the rural parts of the coastal temperate rainforests in North America were probably as densely populated as they are today. They probably used more western red cedar on an annual basis for their longhouses than we harvest today. The indigenous people of the lower Columbia River, some 50,000 people ate 13 million pounds of salmon a year for not a few decades, for thousands and thousands and thousands of years.
The impact has been on a peoples who have a 50 to 60,000 year tradition of sustainability and resilience. Admittedly, 120, 130 years of colonial impact has been huge, and it has probably been one of the heaviest shocks that our people have had within our region. But the reality is that it has been a short, sharp shock.
So, in 200 years, of course, we've exploited those resources at a rapid rate. We've sort of taken the money out of the bank, in a sense, spent it all. And we're finding ourselves increasingly in debt that nature usually pays, and that a large majority of low and moderate income people pay to the advantage of relatively few, and that system just can't persist.
There is an enormous resource of human resilience that resides within our region, which is the people, and like any other resource, if we ignore it and waste it, or don't treat it with the engagement that's required, we will be the source of our own demise.
At a minimum, we would take a deep breath and say, wow, how did this work? Who did live here? What were the lessons they learned? What are the stories that they've told? And are there some of those, that ancient wisdom that's completely and totally applicable to our current circumstances and how we go forward?
Mark Twain said, never let school interfere with your education. School is where you learn how to read and write. Education is where you get from your family, your environment, and your community. Never ever call someone uneducated just because you can't read and write.
The situation is so severe that we should engage in all the possible mechanisms that we have on the table. UN, these connections which will be made here, and the different kind of blueprints or roadmaps that will come out of here. All of them will be meaningful.
I'm very hopeful that these ideas that we cultivate here in the next 2 days. Certainly, the first day, has given me hope that it'll go beyond these 3 days.
To point out the problem of each region is the beginning of this discussion.
Obviously, by linking with the meaningful regional initiatives and a notion that regions are something that can contribute, and which is true. I believe that the local and regional solutions are far better than national ones.
Government will come and go. The people that will be there, are the community people. So we better start building capacity. We better start working with them directly, and that's our experience, and it has worked.
But later on, I would prefer to have some detailed discussion for each organization and everybody's challenge, so that after this convening, we can get some problem solving.
When these 200 communities get together, when they agree on something, they're able to raise a united voice to the government. From what I've learned through the network, networking is the key to to building a resilient future, if you like.
I wanted to hear a completely different approach to how people were solving their problems, and I found it here. No question about that.
But the challenge for us is, how do you ensure that the integrity of the community processes are not overridden by the needs to have a global response to creation of an alternative framework?
Well, the convening this time around is to try to find innovative ways. And I think quite often I ponder over this many hours, even before I sleep.
We don't pretend to have a toolbox of ways to solve all these problems. The idea is that our platform for a growing network is really is the idea of resilience. And resilience is important because it comes naturally out of nature. It's the way natural systems work.
One of the great insights that I think that I've been able to achieve at a personal level in terms of this convening is to meet and talk to people from the Arctic regions, from the South Pacific, from the Melanesian nations, and Latin America, and to see that there are complexities of issues that confront us all. The solutions are not the same. The desired outcome is the same, but the solution for all of these things lies within us all.
It's a wonderful opportunity to listen, to learn, and I think we just want to be really careful that, you know, change, if it's going to happen, will come, you know, in millions of ways that evolve out of the intimate relationship between people and place. The very distinctive qualities and characters of those places are not going to come by self-styled smart people.
In Afghanistan, when we went there and when we trained the first women from Afghanistan, it was an impossible thing because they wouldn't allow the women to come out of their house. So I said, okay, I'll take the husbands along. So the husbands came and we trained the first 3 women ever in Afghanistan. When the woman went and solar electrified the first in the history of Afghanistan, the first village, she went and sat with the men. And the men said, what do you think you're doing? You should be sitting 1 kilometer away. You're not supposed to be sitting here. She said, today I'm not a woman, I'm an engineer.
What we do have to have is revolutionary change in the way that people look about the integrity of preserving the country that for whatever reason, historically, we now all share. And in there lies the task ahead of us.
I don't think it will do just to talk about your future, but not our future. I think we're part of this planet. We are citizens of this planet together. And I think we should have the moral responsibility to look after each other. So that is my challenge.